friend Eric Zimmer hosts The One You Feed. It's a podcast that is based on a simple idea. The one we feed is the one that grows. And his life, Eric, your life, it reads like a movie. You know it reads like a movie. Did you know that? It reads
Does
like
it?
a movie. It shows like a movie, yes. Addiction, homelessness, and then a complete rebuild centered on growth and discipline and changing his life. His life journey shapes everything about how he thinks, about change, about work, about people. It really weaves itself into everything he does and says, whether you know that or not, it does. And his new book, which I'm super excited. I got an early read and it is not out yet, but it's already trending because I think you can pre-order it. But when this is released, it will be the day of release. It's a great book, How a Little Becomes a Lot. So you can see the book cover. And it's about how real change happens through small choices that we make consistently over time and a lot more. So I'm thrilled to have you back talking about this book.
Thank you.
You have a book.
I have a book.
It's exciting.
It is.
And, you did a TED Talk. Usually people do a TED Talk and release a book the next year. You waited a little bit.
Yeah, like 12 years.
Yeah.
Maybe 11 years, something like that.
And, I think the waiting, Eric, makes it weightier. It makes it, you've woven in a lot more about your life. And you also interview hundreds of people from all walks of life. And all of that is fused into the wisdom of this book. So I know we met for coffee and I said, I love this book. I've got to talk to you about it. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you.
You've said people usually know exactly what to do, but they don't usually do it. And I'm wondering about that gap between knowing what I need to do or should do and actually doing it. How do you know what's really happening in that gap?
Well, I think there are a few different things that can happen in that gap, which is why there's a whole book about it and not a few sentences about it. But I do think there's getting clarity on what we want to do, what is the way we get there. There is getting very specific about how we're going to get there. That's a really important piece that a lot of us miss. There's a well-known model of change out there known as the stages of change model, or the trans-theoretical model of behavior change, if you like a catchier name. And it posits 6 steps to making change. Only one of those is like the direct action phase, but we go right to the action phase. So there's a lot of stuff that happens before that we have to get right. Then there is what we would loosely call self-control. It's the moment where we make a decision that either goes the direction we want or not. And so learning how do we talk to ourselves in those moments. So if we can get those 3 broad things right, we've got a lot better chance.
You go through a lot of the models and the details in the book, and I want people to read that and experience the richness. I think one of the things that strikes me is that when you read through the book, and I'm a fast reader, but I deliberately would read some sections slower, is because in order to make those changes, I think really seeing it from all the angles that you bring really helps make some of those changes. But I want to talk about big changes and little changes.
Yeah.
So many times, especially around New Year's, whatever, people think, oh, big change, I'm going to do something, I'm going to radically do my life. And your book kind of pushes against that to say, let's look at smaller changes and that are more successful. But why is it, what's in us that makes us want to push for the big change anyway, even though it's probably not as successful?
It's the same thing that makes us want to get rich fast and get skinny in 4 weeks and have our food delivered in 2 minutes versus 5 minutes. We just like things to happen fast. It's no fun to have to do something and stick with it. It's not actually as enjoyable, but it does turn out to be the way that real change happens. And most of the types of change that people are looking to make in their lives are not like this tiny little one-time change. They're lifestyle-based changes. They want to be in better health. They want to be creative. They want to have better relationships. They want to do better at work. Those are the sort of things that are ongoing practices. And so by their very nature, they can't be done all at once and then finished.
Yeah, they really can't. I think about your podcast and the title and kind of that whole premise of the good wolf and the bad wolf. in these small changes, what's kind of one small repeatable way that someone can feed the good wolf? Is there one kind of takeaway if you say,
I mean,
well, here's a way?
one really simple little thing that you can do is, and we can talk about how to remember to do it and all of that, but is just to ask yourself more frequently, what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now? And what am I doing right now? Because all change happens after awareness, right? You can't change something you're not aware of. So the more that we become conscious of what we're thinking, feeling, and doing, that brings it to awareness, and we're better able to navigate the choice points when they come. So that's like one very simple thing that I think across the board serves most everybody well.
That's good. Eric, there's a lot of habit advice out there, right? There's books on habits, there's seminars on habits, there's just habit advice. And this book, I wouldn't really say is about habits. It has an element that flows through it, but I wouldn't define it exactly as a habit, because it's so much broader. I mean, there's a mental, spiritual, there's so many aspects of it. But I'm curious, do you have a piece of habit advice that you hear a lot that you think, yeah, that's probably wrong?
I think the idea that certain things can be turned into a true habit is what's wrong. Because when behavior scientists talk about a habit, they mean something very specific. They mean something that happens automatically. Putting on your seatbelt in the car is automatic. Brushing your teeth is automatic. Because you do them in the same place, in the same way, over and over and over again. Most of the things that we want to change in our lives, let's say building exercise, it doesn't become a habit in the sense that it's truly automatic. Big behaviors like that, for a whole bunch of reasons, don't fall under the strict definition of a habit. What we can build, though, is momentum. We all know this, right? It's easier to exercise tomorrow if I did it today than if I haven't done it in 3 weeks. So we really can build momentum. But I think part of what has seduced us into the habit literature, and there's been a lot of great stuff written. James Clear wrote an amazing book. He's been on the show a couple times. BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits, he's been on the show. All their stuff is important. But we've been seduced into the idea of habits because we want everything to be easy. We just think, oh, if I can make it a habit, then it won't be hard to do anymore. And that's not my experience. Of things in life that are worth doing, my experience talking to hundreds of people on the podcast, coaching thousands of people, resistance is real and it lives on. And so expecting it to disappear is a recipe to be disappointed.
Oh, that's really good. And we all love James Clear and his view of habits. There's a lot of good info in that book.
It's the best book on habits ever written. I mean, it's truly an outstanding book.
What patterns of change do you notice in people that where it takes root versus where they just spiral and it doesn't? Is there any kind of pattern that you see? It's repeated of you just kind of stumble, and on the other hand, these patterns make you more likely to succeed.
The biggest one, I think, is that the people who make the type of change we're talking about, a lifestyle change, learn how to restart when they get off track. That's the difference between somebody who has what we would call, loosely an exercise habit or a meditation habit, or somebody who is constantly working on their novel, is they understand, like, I'm not going to do this perfectly. I'm going to get off track, and they know how to get back on track much more quickly. Whereas the people who seem to be stumbling all the time are the ones that they get a few days in, they get a week in, and then life gets in the way, as it always does. They get off track, and their brain starts saying, like, see, I knew you couldn't do it. You always start, but you never finish anything. And then their mind starts to become the problem. People who stick with things go, oh yeah, of course I got off track. It happens. I wonder what I can learn from when I got off track this time, and how do I get back on minimal emotional drama around it.
I really like that, because we don't always think in terms of that, both in terms of what you were saying about momentum, and then if you get derailed a little bit, how do you reframe that and keep going? Because that's overlooked a lot.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a lot of people, and I've been able to do this by coaching so many people, and I think people will see this if they look in their own life, is like, when did you have something going well, and then how did it fall apart? And a lot of people will say something like, "Oh, it was going really good until I went on vacation. It was really going really good, but then my mom went into the hospital." Right? Something interrupted the momentum, which is natural. It happens, but they weren't clear enough about how to pick back up on the other side. Now, James in his book calls this never miss twice. I think that's even a little bit too perfectionist. You're going to miss twice. My mom, when my mom has been in the hospital a number of times over the last decade, and when she goes into the hospital, my life becomes chaos. I'm in the middle of a book launch. My life is chaos. So do I miss more than twice? Yeah, sometimes.
But you have to keep going.
But I get back to it as soon as I reasonably can. And also learning to be flexible, learning to say, "Oh, well, I was going to do an hour on the Peloton bike this morning, but I had to get into the hospital at 6:30 because I don't know what time the doctor's going to stop by. They just wander in whenever they want, and you got to be there. But I'll pace up and down my mom's hall for 30 minutes. I'll just move my body somehow. I'm honoring the underlying value of what I'm after, health. I'm just being flexible in how I do it.
Well, I like that, though. I don't like that she's in the hospital. I hope
she's not.
Okay,
right?
she's,
She did well. Actually, the good news for me and the bad news for my sister is that we moved my mom to Denver recently, and now my sister is the one dealing with the hospital visits, of which she just came out of the hospital. So,
well, we all have compassion for that because aging parents is a difficult thing.
You
talk a lot about self-compassion too, and kind
Yeah.
of self-care, self-compassion, all that. When does that become an excuse? So, you're trying to drive and make success and drive change, but you also want to be compassionate to yourself. Talk about that tension.
Well, I define self-compassion as actually a middle place between
I like that's the middle
self-acceptance
place.
and self-improvement.
That's a chapter.
So self-compassion is not letting yourself off the hook. In the same way that a compassionate parent would not let their child do whatever they want. A good, kind parent is going to be able to hold their child accountable. The way I think about it is an example. Let's imagine we've got two students. One is Bobby, one is Sally, and Bobby's teacher says, "Bobby, what is 3 plus 4? And Bobby says, 8. And his teacher says, "Bobby, you idiot. It's not 8. Every time I ask you, you come up with the same stupid answers. Like, you might as well forget about college. You're not even going to get out of elementary school." Bobby's probably going to struggle. Now let's imagine Sally. Teacher says, "Sally, what's 3 plus 4? She says, 8. The teacher doesn't say, "You're right, Sally. It's 8. I'm compassionate." No, the teacher says, "Sally, it's not. It's 7. Here's why it's 7. And you know what? Stop by after class. I'll give you a little bit extra help. And you know what? I believe you can get this." That's being compassionate. But it's not Sally's going to learn math. And so I think that when we think about being kind to ourselves, we think that it allows us to do whatever. It's not. We can hold ourselves to a very high standard, but we can do it with kindness.
Good. Yeah, I think about those early labels that are slapped on kids like that and how big impact. And yet an even more impactful label sometimes is the label we put on ourselves, not realizing what that is. And it's not compassionate to yourself. And to live in that middle place is a much healthier way. Well, you've interviewed hundreds of people and you've coached all kinds of people. What did all of that work that you've done, interviewing and coaching, how has that impacted your view and your own journey?
I think it has taught me that.
And to add to that, is that equivalent to the research you've done? How would you, because you've done research, you've widely read, but you talk to all these people. How does that all play into this book? Because it seems like all of this is in your mind and turned around and then it's offered in a very logical way. And yet there's so much there. It's so rich.
Yeah. Well, I think I just was able to bring a lot of different interests of mine together. And from being a homeless heroin addict at 24, I became really, really interested in how do people change because I had to figure it out to save my own life.
You would not be here.
No, no. I mean, I weighed 100 pounds. I had hepatitis C. I was looking at going to jail for 50 years. So it was a pretty important question.
But by the way, you know how he just says that like off the cuff, like, oh, heroin. You just say it, it just rolls off the tongue. Each one of those sentences just lands like, whoa, like what a formidable change. You're not talking about these little changes from a place of not being there.
No, it is a big change. And it's a change that took lots and lots of little moments over and over and over again that accumulated into me being a completely different person in many, many ways.
Easy.
So I think, what have I learned from talking to all those people? I think what I've learned is that not everybody's the same and not everybody needs the same thing. And so advice that is out there that just says, just do this is going to work for some people, but it's not going to work for a lot of other people. And so what I've tried to do is offer perspectives, some frameworks, some ideas that people can then pick up and make theirs. Because the ultimate expert on how you change is going to be you. And that's what I've really learned from working with so many people and interviewing so many different people, because there's a lot of opinions out there.
Mm-hmm. What about teams? So if you have individuals and you're working with them on a habit, how do you help instill, or can you help instill a leader who looks at a team and wants to have a team habit or a team? How do you make that kind of replicate among people instead of just individual?
Well, I think a leader trying to drive change has to be willing to make the change themselves first. I mean, some of the latest AI research I was just reading indicates this very same thing. Like the biggest driver of whether a team is going to be using AI is whether the leader of that team is doing so, whether you want them to use it or not, right? I mean, but so I think what the leader does is probably the most important thing. But teams can be very, very useful in this because teams help hold each other accountable. One of the biggest things that makes the difference also of people who make changes and don't is what is the support that they have. I've got a whole chapter in the book about that idea. And so a team can be really powerful in that way because there's a certain accountability. I don't want to be the one person on this team that's not doing this thing. And teams can hold each other accountable a lot of ways. You can hold each other accountable with kindness. You can hold each other accountable by joking. There's lots of different ways that we help, get people to go in a certain direction. But I think that I'd start with the leader, and then I'd start with also really trying to make everybody support each other.
Yeah, that's really good. I want to just kind of end and jump to the end of your book because you have a whole chapter towards the end of the book on presence. And you say presence isn't something you master overnight. Life's chaos sidelines our intentions, and when we do remember to take a beat, our brains often rebel because staying in the moment is hard. It's a skill we build slowly and steadily. Setbacks and detours are a given, but that's fine. No matter where we go, after all, there will be. And the chapter is titled The Gift of Presence. I always think of the power of presence. How do we, and without taking from that whole chapter and your whole life, because you kind of practice this, what are some small steps we can take to be more present? Because I see whether it's interpersonal, whether it's in a team, whether it's in a whole company, there's such power in that presence. And the gift of presence to someone is so remarkable. So when I get together with you, I feel instant presence.
Yeah.
Talk about that. How do you take steps to have that presence with others? Because I think it affects happiness. I think it affects corporate culture. I think it affects performance. Give us a little window into that
Yeah.
view of presence.
Like anything, it's something that I think you develop a little bit at a time. But I introduce a method in the book I call still points. And still points are a way of changing thought patterns. And not being present is a form of a thought pattern, or being present is a form of a thought pattern. And what still points are is we get reminded to do something. So let me give you an example of a still point from my own life that helped me develop presence. This is back when I was working in the software industry and I went into an office. And every day when I went from my house to my car, and then from my car to the office, and then reverse that from the office to my car to my house, I would do a very simple exercise. I would say, what are 5 things that I can see right now? What are 5 things I can feel in my body right now? And what are 5 things I can hear right now? Now, doing that noticing, yeah. Because oftentimes we go, be present. Well, how do you do that? Your brain just flits away. So by giving it a little exercise like this, like, what are 5 things I can see? Well, I see your blue eyes. I see that great picture. I see that vase, right? I'm here. I'm giving my brain a little something, to stick to. What am I hearing? But by doing that 4 times a day, 5 days a week, I really changed dramatically. Doing it one time, it's fine, but it wouldn't really matter. But the day after day, the little bit by little bit, suddenly I found my ability to be more present in all the other moments of my life consistently got stronger. And my ability to be present isn't as good as it was when I did that exercise that often, even if I sit and meditate every day, which is all about coming back to the moment. But there was something about that, the tiny thing again and again and again, that was really powerful.
Changes your filter of the world, and then you're looking for it, which gives you that presence. That's not something I would think of, and that's why I like it. And that's why I like this book, because of your journey, your mentoring others, your corporate experience, your hundreds of interviews, and your unique personal journey. And also you just have a mind that's just, that your mind's just a little bit different in terms of thinking of things. But
I'll take that as a compliment.
It's a compliment.
All right.
Because it's like, the brilliance when you see somebody who sees things just a little off the way you do, it gives you such a richness. And all of that is packed into this book. So How a Little Becomes a Lot, The Art of Small Changes for a More Meaningful Life. And Federal Express at the end delivers you a more meaningful life.
Yes, exactly.
So if you get
just finish the book,
you will find
all your problems will be
solved.
There. Yes.
And you'll have practical exercises. So I highly recommend it. It's great. And thanks for coming in and talking to us today. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks.